Yeah, oh my gosh, it's still so tough for me, Frodan, because I want both these players to do so well.
Do you?
It's
really?
sad. I do, because it's like two friends going into a match, and it is a match to the death. Who do you want to come out? It's like, well, I don't want them to be matching to the death. I want both of them to win and take home the $150 prize pool for today.
Yep, so here we are on Honestly. Let's introduce our players. Kicking us off in the top left would be Evil Genius's HuK Chris Ranger, one of the top foreigners for quite some time now. People always point to him as one of the pinnacle examples of how if you work hard, you can get somewhere in esports. Against this guy who also works really hard, but people don't know about him too much. His name is ViBe, Dan Sherlong, and he's getting a pylon immediately placed here just to kind of threaten that hatchery. But
yeah, this is correct because you need to do this type of play if your opponent is going for a hatch first. And actually, the Forge is shown no early Nexus in response to this. This is absolutely correct. And what it does is forces a lot of drones out. I think 4 isn't even enough here.
Oh, wow.
And he might actually have to give up this hatchery at this point.
Oh, man. 3 cannons down from HuK, and you can see that ViBe doesn't have enough surface area to even deal with it. In fact, this is a really good placement here from HuK. And, oh, another cannon. Wasn't sure if he's going to place a second pylon, but he doesn't really need to because that pylon is not being targeted whatsoever. And, yeah, ViBe's not going to be able to hold his hatchery.
It's just insurance. Now, that's what you normally see. All the cancels is so important because now it still does the same amount of damage, but you're able to actually refund yourself quite a bit, so he's not really spending too much into this cannon, the cannon rush. And you can see ViBe has to relocate completely. Very well played by ViBe, by HuK at this point. Now, the normal reaction when this happens is to actually proxy hatchery in your opponent's base. And you can do that Cats' style, where you actually try to get roaches out, but the more standard way is to put a hatchery down at the natural and start evolution chambers. ViBe wasn't able to do that, so I think HuK will get a slight advantage from all of this because he has cannons over here that really stops his opponent from getting out into the field, having that map control. And he might be able to actually section this off, so forces him to do 2 base roaches if he ever wants to connect the bases and get saturation in both of them. You know, it really puts ViBe in some uncomfortable positions where HuK has control of what his opponent is doing.
At the same time, it's a lot can be attested to the fact that HuK scouted quickly after his pylon, which is pretty standard, and ViBe went for a hatchery first, which is pretty dangerous, and that's why ultimately you have to be really cautious when you approach that kind of style. Nonetheless, we see ViBe is placing a 3rd hatchery, but not in an expansion. He's actually going to just place it into his main base for now, still going gasless while droning up very comfortably. You can see that HuK is also doing everything as a pretty standard double gassing, just a little bit more delay because he couldn't get up the amount of minerals that he normally has. But just like you said, I think HuK is just a little bit ahead here, especially because ViBe has made no attempt to really get this natural expansion.
It's actually quite considerable looking at the gas timings right now as well. You can see ViBe is just about maximally saturated at his main. He's actually more than that. He has 2 drones that are doing absolutely nothing. 24 is the most, and he can't actually transfer them unless he actually wants to get hit.
Or reveal the fact that the 3rd base is there. HuK doesn't even know.
Precisely. So there's a lot of big problems with ViBe's build at this point, and it's very difficult for him to do anything about it. But I think he will look to bust out pretty soon. You can see that he is continuing to make Zerglings here, so he's trying to bust out against these cannons. But, you know, some really good SimCity would actually defend against this pretty easily. We'll see if HuK actually tries to invest more into this.
Well, HuK sees the Queens and the Zerglings. And HuK, what is he going to do with this probe? He might actually he's just going to start trying to defend with it a little bit. And bring down any amount of Zerglings, because actually every Zergling that goes down is very good in terms of map control. Removes a lot of ability. And wow, this cannon does an incredible amount of damage. HuK almost takes out all the Zerglings. ViBe finally managed to break through. But HuK gets everything else pretty comfortably. You can see that ViBe is now starting to gas, but you can see the first Stalker already out on the map, giving HuK an incredible amount of map control. And we were talking earlier, you know, the less amount of links for that Stalker is good news, especially now that HuK is able to be really aggressive.
Yeah, HuK playing very well. The pylon is still there, blocking out that hatchery. The first Zealot is getting in here and was able to do a couple pot shots against Zerglings and Queens, but the Stalker is going to get in here as well and just really force ViBe to, you know, really extend his ability to multitask. And the Spine Crawler is going to be put down. This is correct. He needed to do this, but a critical inject is actually missing here. And you can see the queen energy is stacking up quite a bit, almost 50. There it is.
That's going to prove to be really difficult because HuK's going for 8 gates, but with +1. And it's going to be an incredible amount of units that will be pumped out, and you need every single inject possible. Now, ViBe sees all of this with his Overlord.
And how do you react to this? You don't even have a Roach worn out. This is so difficult. So he has to make all these Zerglings.
The pylon's still there, too, at the natural.
Oh, my God. And look at this. A pylon in the main, a pylon at the natural, a pylon at the third. HuK is just freaking amazing at this. Absolutely just tearing his opponent into pieces before it can even start. This will enable him to do some multi-pronged harassment here.
Well, the fact that he can warp in straight into a defensive position because it's able to really hug that geyser immediately, making sure that ViBe can't really engage speed. Only about halfway done. ViBe making 22 Zerglings, and these queens that are brought down the ramp, he needs to protect as much as possible, but this hatchery is not going to be able to come up. Is ViBe going to let it finish?
Ooh, it's going to be... well, he does.
Oh, okay. So
additional warpins are coming in. It's only Stalkers and Zealots, which is actually really tough to deal with when you don't have Roaches. Yes, the Queen buff does help out a little bit, but it's not that much at this point. 8 Roaches are on the way out, and the Zealots are already coming in. Oh, no, the Roaches are actually rallied wrong. And here we go. The engagement will start here.
Oh, HuK's jumbling all of his Zealots, though. We would love to have them come up a little bit from the back to kind of get a surround, but it doesn't really matter because he's got so many units. Look at all the units here from ViBe, trying to see if they can kite as best they can. The Stalker's now getting into it, and this 8 gate with +1, that is the most devastating part of it. HuK's also warping in some sentries to potentially block off the ramp to make sure no reinforcements can really help. As you can see, the only thing left to defend the main are the 2 hatcheries in the main of ViBe. And just as the Zerglings pop in, Force Field to block in the units as HuK is devastating the rest of this main army. ViBe's now going to lose a lot of his drones, which is just a sign of the coffin. GG. HuK takes game number 1 after a very great attack, starting from the early harassments of the cannons.
Okay.
Why are you holding that up? You're rooting for ViBe.
Well, I'm rooting for both of them. I told you this.
Okay.
All right, very clear
But you picked
match.
ViBe.
Yes, I did pick ViBe. Very clear match. I think the hatchery first was punished pretty nicely. I like the use of the canceled cannons. Once his opponent says, well, you're not going to do anything, he puts up another cannon and cancel the first 3. So it still gives you the ability to keep that up, keep the aggression up, but you're able to, salvage a lot of your money and then replace the cannons in an optimal position. He lost around a good, what is that?
He lost, actually, I saw
100?
it was 111. Actually, you're really close. Yeah.
So
that's really good, impressive math estimation. Matt.
Thanks, Joe. But, that's tough, but he's still making out ahead. And he was able to do very, very well directly after that and punish his opponent for delayed economy.
Let's take a closer examination to the big battle that was happening here, especially with the warp-ins. Now, again, this pylon location was key because it was warping in more defensively. You can kind of fall back by the pylon for small engagements if HuK needed to, but he just had enough Zealots anyways. And keeping these Zealots alive was a big thing, especially because at one point the Zealots were able to get in and pressure the mineral line. And when that happens, that's bad news for Zerg.
Now, I would have said one thing. I would actually prefer him to keep the pylon in the main rather than keeping the pylon here. The main reason for that is this pylon over here is right near the natural. The natural, you need that hatchery up to produce more. On top of that, we also want to have open area. The natural actually doesn't have a lot of area to move around, whereas the main has a ton of area. You can definitely surround. So if all the Zealots and Stalkers starting over there, then you're in a really good position.
I wonder if HuK had range to warp into the high ground as well. I think the pylon fell just a little bit short, but something to consider as well. If HuK was able to warp into the top of the ramp, that would have been just the icing on the cake. As you can see, ViBe was just running out of options at this point. He didn't really have anything, and the whole idea is even though Roaches are good against this kind of push, you need to kind of amass them in order to make anything happen. So HuK takes game number 1 here on Odyssey. Thank you so much to Epson, the people who provide projectors for NASL Season 3. Let's find out if ViBe's able to come back into the series, or will HuK close them out and secure a second place spot here in Division 3 at NASL.